TCS Radar, episode 15. Let's hop straight into it. We got 4 very talented players for you today, and then we got our player of the week. So let's get into it. The first player we got is somebody we've been looking at since week 1. First player, TyJohn Brooks. TyJohn Brooks, very speedy player out of Park Center. 5'7", 150-pound senior wide receiver. And the first thing, like I said, is speedy. First thing that comes to mind when you watch him play. Speed, speed, speed. And trust, I'm a good judge of speed. And this guy has it. Legit 4.4 speed, I would say. And, you know, a lot of guys, they say they 4.4, but they really clocking 4.5s and 4.6s out here. No shame, you know, but we know when you see real speed, you know what it is. And TyJohn squats over 400 pounds, so a lot of power in them legs, and he be moving. And so very good route runner, very good hands, type of player that with all his attributes, it's no wonder why South Dakota State's taking interest in him. So that's where he's currently committed for next year, SDSU. And SDSU's coming off 2 back-to-back national championships in that 1AA level, so they got a lot of attention on them right now, and they essentially took all the attention away from North Dakota State, that dynasty that they've had up there for the last handful of years. So it's going to be interesting to see how TyJohn can help them keep that going. And it's going to be exciting to see how they use him on offense. You know, jet sweeps, you know, running deep routes. It's going to be very interesting. And even possibly on special teams, returning kicks or whatnot. He had a big punt return against Irondale a couple weeks ago. Late game punt returner, so very electric player. His stats so far this year has been a little bit hard to find, but as you can clearly see on screen, this guy got mad skill, so we don't even need the stats, to be honest. But if you want some stats anyways, we give you some of his junior year stats. He had 36 catches for over 700 yards and scored 6 touchdowns, and that's, you know, over 1,000 all-purpose yards. So yeah, this guy, he was going in for sure last year. So there's your stats if you want them. But hands down, one of the fastest players we've seen in the state this year, one of the most talented players overall, and it's going to be exciting to see what Brooks does in the future. The next player we got is Laron Collins. He's a 5'8", 180-pound senior running back, linebacker out of Columbia Heights. Now, Laron, he's an all-around stud athlete who's very commanding field presence. All right, it was hard for us to say what we were more impressed with between his offense and defense skills, because he's playing great on both sides of the ball. And, you know, as far as running back goes, I wouldn't say Laron is blazingly fast, but he's very shifty, and he has a nasty stop-and-go game. You know, he can get his feet chopping and change directions quickly, and he's also great with yards after contact, right? So you can count on him to put up a fight when he's running that ball. So overall, a very solid running back. On defense, he just flies around, just straight up flies around, and the guy's everywhere. You know, what we like most is that he wraps up and he explodes to his tackles, and that's what makes him a very good tackler, a very good linebacker, very good defensive player. Another guy who, similar to Jaden Harris, the guy from Cretan we had covered in a past episode, like undersized for a linebacker, you know, could play high school linebacker, but it's going to be interesting to see on that next level if they move him over, if he's just going to bulk up and keep playing linebacker, or if they're going to move him over to a DB. But either way, Laron's the type of guy who I know he's going to be able to transition. Very talented. So far this year at running back, just to give you some of his stats, at running back he has over 850 yards rushing with 10 touchdowns, and he's averaging almost 7 yards per carry, so he's definitely running that thing. And then against a couple big games, against St. Cloud Apollo, he had 238 rushing yards for 4 touchdowns. I guess that was the biggest game that he's had this year. But on defense, last year he had 60 tackles. Sorry, we're gonna go with this year's defense. He had 60 tackles so far, and he had 14 alone against St. Anthony, 13 against Zimmerman. So yeah, that's just the stats to back up what we're saying about him on defense. But last year as a junior, Laron didn't run the ball as much, only had 355 yards, about 2 touchdowns. But on defense, he was going hard last year. He had 89 tackles, 15 tackles for a loss, 5 sacks. and a large majority of his tackles were solos. So, yeah, I mean, he's getting multiple looks from colleges based on, like, his social media action. So we'll make sure to keep an eye on him and see what his next move is after this season. So that's Laron Collins out of Columbia Heights. And up next, so the next couple players we got, they're both football players and hockey players. So the first hockey players we're covering here. We told y'all we was going to cover every sport. We told y'all we just slowly making the progress. But anyways, first off, we got Isaac Johnson. Isaac's a 5'11", 195-pound senior running back, linebacker out of St. Paul Highland Park. And he's the type of player who's capable of putting the team on his back on both sides of the ball. And as a running back, quite literally carries guys on his back, as y'all can see from the film that we're going to have up. And, I mean, he certainly has more of a physical, power running style. And Highland runs a lot, in between the tackles type stuff, inside zone running. So he definitely puts in work in the trenches. And so far this year, he has 171 carries for almost 1,000 yards. As of today, he's 8 yards short of 1,000. So putting in work. He also has 8 rushing touchdowns so far this year. And so that's about at 171 carries for almost 1,000. He's ripping off almost 6 yards a carry. So, yeah, he's going hard. And in the win this year against Minneapolis Southwest, he ran for 220 yards and had 2 touchdowns. In another win against Bloomington Kennedy, he went for 196 yards on the ground and a touchdown. So those were some of his big games this year. But he's been playing consistent all year. This year in defense, because again, he plays both sides of the ball. So this year in defense, he has over 60 tackles and a forced fumble. So we don't have his offensive stats for last year, for his junior year. But on defense, as a junior, he has 78 tackles, 3 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. So without a doubt, he's a commanding presence on defense. And Isaac also excels, as I said, on the ice, playing hockey for Highland Park. And just to throw out a few of his stats, we'll have some of his hockey highlights on the screen too. But to throw out some of his stats from his past 2 years, his sophomore and junior seasons combined, he went for a total of 25 goals over those 2 seasons and 19 assists, making him responsible for 44 points overall. So debatably, you would say one of the better athletes in St. Paul right now. Definitely going to keep an eye on him going forward, see how his fall football season wraps up, see what Highland can do in the playoffs, and then also see what he's going to do on the ice this year, if he's going to play again this year, and then of course going forward. So good luck to Isaac. That's Isaac Johnson, and go Scott. All right, and for the last profile, we got Jackson Reeves. Now Jackson Reeves is a 6', 185-pound senior QB from Hill Murray. And here's another guy who we had a chance to see in person. We saw Isaac Johnson in person. And a few other players we've covered in the past, we actually got to see him in person. So Jackson's another one of those players. And we went to their game against North St. Paul. Hill Murray against North St. Paul. It was swelteringly hot that day, just for the record. But, yeah, Jackson was going off that game. Hill Murray put the beating on North St. Paul that day. But, yeah, Jackson was doing it all. I'm pretty sure he had over 100 yards rushing and throwing that game. And he even returned a punt return for, I'm pretty sure it was for a touchdown. It's either for a touchdown or for a very long return. But I just remember being shocked. Like, man, they got this dude returning balls as well, returning punts as well. Like, man, that's very impressive. And so it was really that performance, that game, that spotlighted us to him and rose that attention for us to him. And so that's why we wanted to do this profile. And so far this year, he's thrown for over 900 yards and has 19 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. That's a big one right there. No picks. And on the ground, he's rushed for over 500 yards and 8 touchdowns. So combined rushing and passing, he's over 1,400 all-purpose yards. And if you throw his punt returns, I don't know how much he's been returning. But, the guy is putting up numbers for sure. And he had a big game against St. Anthony this year. St. Anthony, where he threw 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then another big game against South St. Paul, where it was another game where he threw and ran for over 100 yards. And then as a junior, he led the Pioneers to an 8-3 record. They lost to Byron last year in the 4A quarterfinal. But last year he threw for over 1,300 yards and had 24 passing touchdowns, and he also had 5 rushing touchdowns. And then, as we mentioned just a little bit ago, he also plays hockey. So this guy's been putting up a lot of stats. I mean, this guy's a lot of goals, a lot of assists in his last 2 seasons. As a sophomore and junior, he's just been stuffing the stat sheet for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see how he comes out this winter and see what he can do with that Hill Murray team. Historically, a very good program. So let's see what Hill Murray does on the ice this year. But yeah, man, that's Jackson Reeves. Again, very dynamic athlete, and a lot of stats in both football and hockey. We'll see how he finishes out this year, both in the fall and the winter time. And another player who we're excited to see what happens in their future. Yeah. Now it's time for the player of the week. Week 7 player of the week. And for this one, this came out of a big time game in 5A, Alexandria against Moorehead. But the player of the week this week is Rain Battle, 6'2", 210-pound senior wide receiver linebacker out of Moorehead. So he had a big game on both sides of the ball against Alexandria. Alexandria was the number 1 team going into week 7 in 5A. Moorehead was number 2, so a battle of 1 versus 2. Big deal. Moorehead came out on top. It was a close game. So going into the game, a lot of hype. And then so Moorehead ended up winning 36-34. Very close, hard-fought battle. And Rain finished with 9 catches for 141 yards and 2 touchdowns on offense. On defense, he led the team with 8 tackles. 3 of them were solos, 5 assisted. So, yes, player of the week, Rain Battle. And Rain, he's an explosive 3-sport athlete. Also plays basketball and does track. He was a high jumper in the track team. This past spring, he actually was the section champ in the high jump, setting the PR for himself of 6 feet 1 inch. So I'll say this year so far, he has 28 catches and over 500 yards for 8 touchdowns. So he's on a pretty good pace this year. He's on a pretty good pace this year so far. Has been playing really good on defense this year. He has over 30 tackles and an interception. So player of the game for week 7, player of the week for week 7, but also been playing very good this year. And last year, as a junior, he was putting up good numbers. He had 35 catches for 582 yards, 6 touchdowns. And then on defense, he had finished with 62 tackles last year, 42 of which were solos. So that's Rain Battle. Another good athlete. Minnesota got him. We need some athletes come to Minnesota. But, yeah, that's what we got this week. Just player profiles and player of the week this week. Next week, we'll check back in with some more team rankings and things of that nature. But, yeah, a little bit shorter format we've been doing the past couple episodes for this, but we just really want to spotlight the players. A lot of good players. We want to give them the attention that they deserve. So, TCS Radar, episode 15. See you next time.